It's 12:10, and you're listening to the Sheletta Show on WCCO Radio, your good neighbor station. My name is Sheletta Brundage, and I'm the host of the show. You know, I saw this story, and I was so intrigued, I had to invite the author on the program this morning to talk about it. A wave of black students take presidencies at top-tier universities, black student body presidents at predominantly white colleges. We have got to talk about it. And to get more on it, I have Miss Randi Richardson from NBC News on the phone line. Thank you so much for joining the Sheletta Show.
Sheletta, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Now, girl, I got to tell you, when I saw little Noah Harris over at Harvard University become the student body president at Harvard University, looking like one of my three sons in his cute little navy blue pantsuit with his little burgundy tie. You know, as a mother with a black son who has been seeing so much death and devastation with, Casey Goodson Jr., and we're in Minneapolis, so George Floyd and Philando Castile, Ahmaud Arbery. I mean, I could just go on and on and on. You know, when we see images of African-American men, and I have to sit down and talk to my three sons about these stories and how to handle themselves with police. And then I see your story. It was like, boys, come in. They were like, who's dead now? I'm like, nobody. Look at this good looking boy. He looks like, he's the president at Harvard University. Tell us more about the story and how you put it together.
Well, first, thank you. That's very kind of you to say all those words. And I think the sentiment of too many names, another name, is one that the entire black community feels. And when my mom first read the piece, she called me and she goes, Randi, you write like you love black people. It just felt like a warm hug.
It did.
And
I feel so good.
We need some feel-good stories and some feel-good moments with everything going on right now. And I'm so glad I reached out to each person in the article, to Noah, who's, of course, at Harvard, to Danielle at MIT, to Naomi at UCLA, to Jason at Brown. And it became clear that not only were they were black presidents at predominantly white institutions, but a big part of their campaign and what their current focus is surrounded by race, is surrounded by socioeconomic background. COVID had a big influence, as well as the current presidency. And I'm almost surprised this hadn't been written about before, right? 3 of the 4 of them took office in May. So this is a whole summer. No one had jumped on it. Thank God. It was a good story for me. My editor loved it. And now they're just now starting to get the attention that they so rightfully deserve. So I'm happy for them. And I'm glad that the story can be that feel-good moment that so many people need right now.
How did you find out about the story? I mean, a lot of people heard about Noah at Harvard because it's Harvard, right? So when black folks do something at Harvard, everybody's going to know about it. But then you put it all together with all the rest of these African-American, college students who are now president at predominantly white universities. I mean, how did you kind of put the pieces of this puzzle together?
It was sure enough a puzzle nonetheless. I almost feel bad because I just realized University of Minnesota had its first black student body president who left office over the summer, J.L. Karandi.
Okay, come on now. And you talking to Minnesota. Come on now.
Had I known then Minnesota, I would have included her. But unfortunately, the timeline didn't add up. But as far as how I found the story, I was scrolling on LinkedIn just mindlessly, and there was a screenshot of a Zoom meeting that had 6 black faces on it. So, of course, that caught my attention. This is LinkedIn. It's not usually a black space. What's happening? And then the text over the video was black student body presidents at PWIs talk about being black presidents at PWIs, right? And I go, oh, they're in community. They talk to each other. They're having a whole meeting about their shared experiences and really leaning on each other, not only as leading these historically underrepresented universities, but also just as friends and as counterparts on this life of college and everything being thrown at them. And as I said, I hit them all up individually. When I interviewed them, they routinely brought up the other person's college and everything being thrown at them. And as I said, I hit them all up individually. When I interviewed them, they routinely brought up the other person or so-and-so at this university. And I was thinking, wow, I was not expecting this sense of camaraderie, but nonetheless, it ended up making the story as well. And I think that coming together and through the reporting just really made it match up nicely.
Now, did you have any pushback from editors? Were they receptive to the story?
I did not have any pushback. My editor is very open. This was also on NBC BLK, so they're looking for stories that center the Black community. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have any hurdles. My editor is great. She was on board from the beginning. She encouraged me to include different aspects that I didn't already have. So it was a well-rounded team effort for sure.
And, you know, the one thing that I love about these students, you know, in times past when African Americans, especially at, you know, predominantly white universities or at corporations, you know, would move up, you know, let's just be honest, they forget they Black. It's like, I don't want to say I'm Black. Y'all don't look at me like I'm Black. I'm not going to make eye contact with the Black employees because I don't want these white folks to realize I'm Black and then I lose my status. But these students are fighting for Black Lives Matter. They are raising money. They are talking about social justice and causes important to people of color. The one thing that surprised me most about the stories is the fact that they are authentically and unapologetically Black.
Sheletta, I think code switching is a huge thing in the Black community when you're in white spaces. Especially, it was reflected in what I learned from them as I interviewed them, that they feel that pressure. And at the same time, going back to their hometowns or going back to, quote unquote, Black friends and feeling pressure, maybe I'm not Black enough anymore, or just all of these competing thoughts, right? And so I think one of the beauties of the piece is that, as you said, while they are Black at a PWI, they didn't have to compromise what they wanted to fight for, and they did not have to compromise what was important to them in order to win their presidencies. I remember I was talking to Danielle, and she said, a question that I got at my debate was, what have you done for students who are not Black? And that it hit me in that moment that some folks, that is their frame of thought, right? But for her, it was more so about what I do for Black students ultimately benefits my entire student body. And she even mentioned, which made the piece, that as we're leading these student bodies with all of our classmates, we want to take a particular interest in the ones who need more support, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think there's sort of a beautiful duality between, yes, Black people in leadership, they're handling business, they're doing what they need to do, while also showing up in, box braids and being, frankly, as unapologetically Black as possible, which Naomi and Danielle are huge believers in. Noah spearheading the $300,000 fundraiser is huge, and all of them sort of being in their lane and doing their part, I think is really inspiring for those who want to continue along these paths.
Now, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, what kind of inspiration do you think this brings to young students, young high school students who read your story, who are following them, who see their example as they get ready to embark on their college careers? We're talking to Miss Randi from NBC News. We'll be right back. I tell you what, Randi Richardson's NBC story has me optimistic, keeping my head to the sky. Your mama, she called it. I mean, this story was just like a warm hug. It's what we needed to see. Beautiful images of talented, educated, young African-American college students becoming presidents, college presidents at predominantly white institutions. You talk to them, they're smiling, they're happy, they're doing the work. I've been showing my sons and daughters because, two women are in this piece, Naomi and Danielle. So I was able to share this story with my daughter as well, and to see these beautiful young Black brilliant minds speaking to you for this NBC News Black story. Just talk to me about what that felt like to have all these great young minds come together for one piece and talk about their experiences.
I honestly, just hearing you paint the picture almost moves me to tears, thinking about how powerful, strong Black images are for the youth in our community. Seeing Noah in a suit, looking presidential, that goes a long way, on top of the fact that he's actually a president, right? And I think because all of these college students are closer to age to the high schooler or to the middle schooler, it just feels, it hits a little closer to home than when Barack Obama was in office, or even now with Vice President-elect Kamala Harris set to take office. And so talking to all of them throughout the course of the interviews, it became clear that not only were they doing it for themselves, they were doing it for the culture, right? They were doing it for their siblings or the young folks in their families. And it really starts a ripple effect throughout the country of not only inspiration, but I can do this, right? This is attainable. This is a realistic goal that is not far-fetched at all. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just honestly proud and grateful to even have been a part of it, and to put it together in a way where all of that is connected and messaged out as often, hopefully, as all of the police brutality that we see and all of the other negative messages that our babies take in.
Yeah, it felt good. It is good. I know the impact on young African-American students, high school students, will surely be felt because, like you said, honestly, for my son and for kids in high school, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders, Kamala Harris is an old woman. For them, they think like 35 is granny-ish. So they think like Kamala Harris and Barack Obama, they're old folks. And that happened back then. But to see these young people who look like them, who are not far removed from their age, doing these things, gives them something else to talk about, new hope, new aspiration, and who thinks about being a college president? That's another thing. That's another goal that we can put on their plates because, going to college was a goal, right? Graduating from college then became the other goal. And so now college president, something else to aspire to. So it gives them something something new and different than that they can do, and they can see themselves doing it in the story. What kind of feedback have you gotten besides me and your mama loving it? What other kind of feedback have you gotten now that the story is out? Because I'm gonna just tell you, most NBC reporters. They don't put their email addresses on their stories. You have to go hunting them down, and yours is like right there. So it's very easy to find you and invite you on the show. So thank you. But anybody else, I'm like, oh Lord, and I got to go through the PR department who may not be there till Monday. And then that person might not coming back. By the end, the story's old. It's about 2 weeks old. So you were just right there and available. So you're getting that feedback directly. So tell me what you've been hearing from people who've read the story.
Yeah, there's so much. First, I want to go back to what we were talking about as far as Obama and Harris being so far away. I remember when I was a teenager and I was trying to pull some trick on my mom. And she goes, Randy, I was a teenage girl once. I know it doesn't seem like it, but I was. And I just remember being so baffled. You, a teenager?
What?
Mom. And I think that's how a lot of high schoolers, like, you were my age? It just is unfathomable.
Like, we came out 45. Like, we came out 52. Like, we were born 52 years old.
In our teenage heads, that's what happened. But nevertheless, the feedback, I am just taken aback by the warm reception this piece has gotten. I've gotten notes from mothers and daughters who resonate with the story of wanting to use a Black-owned bank, or of their campuses being very heavily patrolled by the police. I've gotten a couple of story pitches, right, from people who said, since you wrote this so well, can you take on this story? And as a journalist, that is truly the highest compliment. because that means you trust me to tell your story and to tell it well in a way that you know I will do it to your standard. And for me, that is truly the cherry on top. And then in addition to like family and stuff, it has been the heartthrob that I hoped it would be in a difficult time.
Well, I was just talking on this show last hour to my former university president over at University of Houston. She's now the dean at the School of Communication. And we were talking about the need for diversity in newsrooms and having more women in the media so that we can tell stories from our perspectives. So it's not told by someone else outside of our lived experience. How important do you think it was for you as an African-American woman to be able to tell this story about African-American students?
I was very in touch with not only the fact that I was Black, I was young, I'm a woman. I just graduated college in May. So talking about student body presidents on college campuses specifically could not have been any more tailored for me to write. I think when we think about sort of positionality and what many frame as historical disadvantage, I almost view that as an additional arrow in my quiver, because it gives me perspective, right? And sort of an additional arrow in my quiver, because it gives me perspective, right? And sort of a frame of thought and a mentality before I go into interviews, before I decide whether or not to take on a story that many of my colleagues would just let fall by the wayside, especially when we're talking about more of the rural Black communities that don't get the coverage that they need, and as sort of the widening gap between major news outlets and just newspapers closing down and smaller stations not having the funding they need to continue, it becomes that much more important for the newsrooms who are still working to have a diverse staff, right? And more importantly, diverse stories. I've seen some incredible work from non-Black journalists about, structural racism or about student loan debt or whatever the case may be, and they center Blacks, the white people, Latinx. And so and Khalil and Naomi said this while I was interviewing them, they are not completely gung-ho about just having Black faces in high places, but rather folks who are aligned with the agenda. And so I think when those two things are present, we can do a lot.
Now, tell me this. What's your next story? Because you've got a lot of opportunities coming your way. This one was so excellently written and told. It pulled you in. It gave you a synopsis of all the people involved. It wasn't too busy. It didn't move too fast. And it was easy for me to read, as well as for my 14-year-old son to digest. I know, girl, it's a promotion and an award or something coming up out NAACP Image Award. I don't know what it's going to be, okay? Take your mama with you and y'all pull your ear so I know y'all saying hey to me and the kids. But what's next?
Thank you. No, I pride myself in writing so that any age can actually understand it. Because far be it from me to write in legal jargon way up in the clouds, and I can't even understand it, let alone the audience. And as you said, I leave my email at the bottom of my articles for that exact reason. So listen, if y'all want to pitch me a story, my email inbox is open. I always reply. It may not be a favorable decision, but I always reply, so at least you know. What's next for me, there's so much happening right now. I am actually moving teams. It's a lateral move to the politics team in January. So I'll be there for the inauguration, for Biden's first 100 days, for whatever Harris ends up doing. So we shall see what is to come. I am convinced it will not be a dull moment.
No, ma'am, it will not.
And then more immediately, recently a law firm filed a class action lawsuit against the NCAA on behalf of HBCU student athletes. So it's just with that alone, it's very complicated, a lot going on, and that's the next thing I'm going to tackle. So stay tuned. It's going to be good.
That one sounds good. I'm going to have to tell Charles Hallman. He's one of our sports reporters here at the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder newspaper, and he is all about HBCUs and the NCAA, and he's been telling those stories for decades. So we're going to have to make sure he checks that out. Miss Randi, I'm so proud of you. Congratulations on all your success. Thank you for telling this story and sharing it with the world. We appreciate it.
Sheletta, thank you for having me on. The pleasure and the thanks is all mine.